Okay, good. Good evening. Welcome to the special meeting of the Board of Supervisors of East Lansing Township. It's our budget hearing, budget planning workshop for August the 28th, 2023. All members of the Board of Supervisors are in the room. Now it's on virtual, coming in virtually. I don't know if there's anyone members of the public or not. Okay, all right. Great.
Prepared an agenda. You want to do the pledge?
Absolutely.
Rising going to the pledge of the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
No one for the public is online. Agreeable. You'd like to address the Board of Supervisors? Any public comment time? You can throughout if you want. Okay, approval of the August 28th, 2023 Board of Supervisors budget meeting agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Meyer, and thank you for the second, Mr. Root. Those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? And carries. Budget discussion 5A. Kevin Lister.
So to start, sorry, I'm going to jump in. So as the board knows,
Stetter, Tara, let's go and jump in.
budgeting doesn't just start today. It's been ongoing all year long and it will continue to be, right? So, but this is a great start of a process that ensures that township staff priorities and township board priorities are in alignment with one another. We heard last year at this type of discussion session, the board's questions about staffing and how we make all of these programs and projects move forward with additional staffing. And so you saw that in your 23 budget, and we're happy to say that that last position is hopefully accepting in the next day or two.
Great.
So that's a great thing for us as we move forward. We also heard that there was contemplation needed for additional volunteer fire service funding in some shape or way. And so the Emergency Services Committee has formed a finance group, and they are moving forward with discussions of how the volunteer fire services of the township can be funded in various ways. Another topic we heard about was communication, and internally, externally, among other municipalities, and the board authorized the hiring of an HR communications professional in her short time here. I think she's made leaps and bounds in our Facebook, and she's gone over our website numerous times to offer changes to the website, and she has also done a lot of research on the emergency alert option that we're going to put forward in the 2024 budget that would give us direct access to residents that sign up for that. So now to start the discussion, we'll let Kevin tell us where we stand at
5A. Starting out, I just wanted to do some give my expectations as far as where compared to budget. Starting with the revenue, the real estate taxes feels that we're going to fall about 100,000 short of the budgeted amount. 3.5 million. It's not that big of a number. Also, will be made up the real estate transfer tax collections, which is the strength of that the real estate market that we're already over budget. The earned income and local services taxes, we're going to end up short of budget. Currently, we're compared to where we expect to be through the end of July, we're 10% below. Some of it's due to some non-recurring payments that were received in 22. Hopefully some timing issues that will get straightened out by the end of the year. Admissions taxes, obviously through July, we don't have a whole summer season and early fall, but I feel as though we're gonna exceed budget there. The cable franchise, we should be pretty close. The PA shared revenue, that includes FERDA and the state pension aid and fire insurance. We don't typically receive those until September, October timeframe. So usually what that number will end up being. So, have any feeling on that? The police services with Upper Lake Top Township will probably end up about under 35,000 short of budget. We base the revenue on the percentage of calls that take place in Upper Lake Top Township. That percentage was lower than budgeted last year by a fairly sizable number. So the overpayment was being applied to this year's billing, so end up lower number. The general government revenue, this is zoning department revenue. During August, we received some large zoning permit fees. At this point in August, we're already over budget. And then if Greenfield North happens this year, we'll be well over. Overall, I believe we'll probably be close to budget or maybe slightly below budget. Expenditure side, the administration category department will probably come in over budget by a slight amount. Data processing will probably come in under budget. Jeff was able to get some better pricing on equipment and also find cheaper alternatives to projects that had been budgeted. The admin building will probably come in at budget or slightly below. However, on the police side, police department, it will exceed budget there. Overall, I think we'll come in at or below budget for total expenditures. And or like the net of revenues and expenditures, I believe will come in pretty close to the budgeted deficit. I wanted to point out that in the 3 to 5 year projection, the ending projected fund balance changed significantly. The beginning fund balance that I had used was an old number, and although it increased that, so it changes the fund balance of expenditures. That will actually allow 23 and 2024 to be above the board's policy. So even without making any changes to revenue streams or expenditures, our tax rates should still be above the policy percentage at the end of 24. Also, just as far as an outside rating, see the draft report from Moody's indicating that our credit rating is staying the same what it has been over the, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years. It's considered high grade. There really is only one rating level above that. So I feel we're in pretty good shape as far as the township is concerned. The sewer fund. With interest rates where they are and earnings are well budget. Able to. Return on the money. Using liquid. In the tapping fees, it looks like we're on the budget, but depending on whether Greenfield North comes in this year, that could change that number so that we would end up going through budget. The sewer use charges, I believe we should be coming in right at budget. Overall, the total revenues, I feel that we should exceed budget on the revenue side. On the expenditure side, it's very difficult to tell. The big driver is the sewage treatment cost. There's the cost from the city. And at this point, we still haven't received the revised or recalculated 2022 flow charges, which then they recalculate our first and second quarter 23 bills. We haven't received that those adjustments yet, so hard to predict. The sewer operations, I think we should likely end up being at budget or below budget. So again, it's going to be difficult to predict where we'll end up in comparison to budget for the expenditures, just because we don't have the number from the city yet. Stormwater fund, something that too interested in. That we should, the net basis, we're at a lower deficit than what we budgeted.
Tim, can you go back to my advice?
Go ahead.
Back to the 5-year projection. I was listening, but more looking, so I was going to make sure I understood what you said there. 5-year projection for general fund in particular. This is showing an ending fund balance of negative 701,000, but I heard there was something you were saying while I was either looking for it or actually looking at it. Can you just, what were your talking points for the general fund?
Yeah, the projected ending fund balance changed. I had been using a preliminary 2021 fund balance estimate for 2021 and 2022. We had better results than anticipated, so our fund balance was, I think, $4 million difference.
Okay.
Because I think originally it was, the original projection showed like 3.8 as the ending fund balance at the end of 23.
But we're actually 5.2 is likely where we're going to end up.
Right. And then that changed the fund balance as a percentage of expenditures.
Okay, so with all that said, we're going to have our ending fund balance is correctly stated as negative 701,000 in the general fund at the end of 2026.
Right. If no changes are made.
Right. But based on the assumptions you have here of 1% increase of taxes, right? Based on these assumptions.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Got it.
What was the ending fund balance for 2022?
Yeah, it was like 6.6, 6.7.
How are you going to calculate the interest rates? That's going to.
I'm not sure. I would imagine they're going to be somewhat lower than they are right now, but
So I would guard against carrying those interest numbers ahead. Downsizing,
Right.
how are we gonna balance out lower? So assume, those numbers moving forward, maybe risk for finances.
What percentage are we getting on the savings?
It's been ranging, I can say recently it's close to 5. And some of they have different classes and they have a class and a prime. The prime is over 5. I think it's like 5.
All coming through Pliget. All coming through Pliget, is that where it's coming from?
Yeah, a large majority of it.
Yeah.
And then you straight from M&T, which is isn't quite sure.
Thank you. Mike and Roger, if you recall that several years ago, the board adopted a policy of a fund balance as a percentage. And it's 18%. You can see we're going into 24 as of right now, with a projected fund balance at over twice that. So Corey's question, ending of 2026, you can see what would be if the board doesn't do anything to enhance revenues, doesn't do anything to pull back expenses, and if the projections that staff has put into this, just to clarify that.
Yeah.
Okay. Further questions for Kevin?
Just one other, you may not have the answer to it now, but it'd be helpful to look at for your assumptions. Did you test those with a look back? No. Might be helpful. To just look back about what was our increase over the last 5 years. Say the next 5 years are the same, but the better number to look at to compare to.
Okay, anything else, Kevin? All right, got a mouthful. Chief Serby.
Good evening, gentlemen. Things on my list that I'd like to run past you. Biggest department is personnel. We talked last year about trying to run a little fast in a time when it was difficult to find people, and with the expectation of having some retirements coming, and we had approved 5 people to be hired last year. We hired 4 out of those 5. And then when we got into 2024, I dismissed one officer, and we had another officer resign. And then we had third officer become full-time over at the middle school as a CSA. So I'm asking for positions in 2024. We currently have 40 sworn, and that would take our number up to 44, but we also have 2 retirements pending, one in March of 24 and the other one in May of 24. Sergeant Congress and Detective Yeilman. And the other dynamic there that you should be aware of, by the end of September here of this year, we'll have 8 officers who could leave at any time. When you run that through to the end of 24, that number will be 11 officers that could leave at any time. So about 1/4 of the workforce. So
Reasons, Steve, to believe that 50 to 60% of that could take place?
well, I believe that there will be 2 officers who will likely be looking to sign the drop. They both one becomes eligible next month, and the other one becomes eligible in May of 24. The one that's eligible next month is playing things very close to the chest. I don't really know what he's going to end up doing. But the other officer did tell me that he will likely have signed the drop by June of 24. And whether he stays the whole time, 3 years, he's not 100%. So I will not be surprised if I have 2 people sign the drop between now and next summer. Be surprised at that at all. So that would affect some numbers, obviously. But again, just trying to stay ahead of that curve. We did run an interview. We had some really solid interviews out of this last session, and we're starting backgrounds, and we'll be able to move forward with making some conditional offers here in the near future.
So the officer at the academy now, Zollner, is he?
Zentner.
Zentner, yeah, close. Is he, so he's in the 40?
He's in.
Okay, okay. So do we? This is how we do it. Great. Do we approve the number of FTEs, or do we approve how many people you should hire? Meaning, like, should the board be giving direction to say, yes, it makes sense to have this many sworn officers? Because it's a plus minus game right throughout the year at all times, especially we know, right? It's +2, -11, potentially, plus just by chance, we're in, we might have our officer resign or move somewhere else or whatever. So how do we actually, what direction have we given in the past about hires? Chief.
Yeah, it's been a level of staff.
Number of-
It's been 40
Okay.
sworn officers is a level that was previously approved. With the ongoing discussion about, running heavy, if you will.
Yeah, sure.
Period of time until the trend stabilizes a little more.
So
Okay.
That was my
Yeah,
understanding.
okay. I just want to make sure. Yeah. I mean,
The emphasis on that heavy, we all said, if you're gonna need to do a little bit of an overlap, people are gonna be facing the situations.
So heavy means
hire more than.
higher number. We're budgeting for that.
Correct. Sorry, Roger, go ahead.
I know the answer to this, but I have to ask anyway. So what's more stressful, running heavy or running lean?
Running lean would be more stressful. The big thing that impacts us, I think, on a regular basis is finding guys to fill shifts, because out of 40 sworn, we probably have about 12 who are solid go-to people that will cover vacancies and stuff like that. And then another larger number that'll here and there, and then a smaller number who just don't pick up any overtime.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a stressful thing to deal with when you have a sick call off at 3, 4 in the afternoon, and you're trying to get a fourth man to work the shift in 2 more hours. So now my fallback is that I can say, hey, you're working, but I have to be able to get a hold of you. There's a little, I want to call it gamesmanship, but everybody has a cell phone, but not everybody picks up.
Certain practices and behaviors that are suitable to getting them last minute, and certain practices and behaviors that don't.
Chief, would you go over the drop again? What are the features of that?
So officer can sign the drop. They are, the term is superannuated, meaning they have their age requirement to retire, and they have the number of years worked full time to retire. So that's 50 years of age and 25 years of employment. And once they've attained both of those numerics, they can sign a drop, and the drop can run to a maximum of 3 years.
So 3.
So they must retire in 36 months. They can retire sooner than that. And what happens with the drop, what that does is it takes what the officer and what the township would normally be setting aside for that officer's pension, and it puts that into an interest-bearing account for the length of the duration of the drop. But in the meantime, their retirement pay freezes once the signature goes on the paper. So just for round numbers, if an officer is making 100,000 when they sign the drop, that's what their pension is then based on, 100,000. Even though in the next 3 years that could go up to, let's say, 105, 108,000. They don't get that for retirement, but the monies that have been used there, put into an interest-bearing account, and the officer is eligible to have that once they leave the drop program. That's kind of a lump sum, I guess you will.
So, I'm sorry.
Mike, no,
Well, is it mandatory or that's how you retire?
No,
No, then good.
you can, like any of these, six guys right now, and 8 in September could walk up and say, hey, here's my 2 weeks, I'm done. Well, then they didn't have to give me their 2 weeks, but I mean, but yeah.
The average of their top 3 years for their pension.
I'm
How
sorry.
does that work? Average of their top 3?
Yes, sir.
For the pension.
Yes, sir.
okay, Mike?
Yep,
Good.
thank you.
Robert?
So over the last 18 months, quality of applicants edging up, edging down, still a challenge or?
I put it numerically down, okay, but quality this last round was very good. Yeah, we had some very good interviews. It might have been, why don't you chime in? One of the better rounds, top 3 interview rounds that I've sat in on.
Wow, good to hear, Steve.
That's on the surface. Again, we know how this thing changes once we get into the background phase, and we've had a list of people, and we've gone through the top 10 people and washed them all out. So I say that, but
Yeah, the interview.
Yeah.
The whole report. So the other thing I was going to say about level of staffing is that although, when we have a few more than the complement, the approved complement, it has a tendency to lower the amount of overtime costs that we have, but it's not a 1-to-1. So you can't say if we, hire another officer, then the overtime is going to go down by that amount. It doesn't look at it that way, but it does have an effect on the overtime costs that we have.
So how many, the 11 that could leave, how many of those are in name? Don't call me.
well, so 4 of them, myself included, are of the rank of lieutenant or above. So we don't work a lot of overtime, and typically because we're the most expensive overtime that the department's going to pay out for. So although we could work the overtime, we find somebody who costs less, and we let that person work the overtime. And we do have a rule that governs that, by the way. So when overtime becomes available and it's on the short term, like same day, couple days, that can be assigned first come, first serve. But if it's out, and I'm going to forget how many days out, but if it's out a certain way, then most senior or high ranking person wants it. The only other personnel thing I'll mention is that Chris Lighty, who was on the list last year to get hired from our CSA position, that didn't happen. He's on the list again this year, but we're operating with 1 CSA. I'm comfortable with 1 CSA. We had talked about 2, but I don't believe we need to go there, at least not now. We have enough. I don't think we'd have enough work for 2 people, put it that way.
The other thing that Chief may have mentioned, I may have missed it, was that 3 of those candidates would need a full round,
That's right.
which is 10 months.
That's right.
I saw that, thank you. What's the 2-week stint? What does that do? One of them has a possibility of needing to be at the academy for a 2-week stint.
So that individual's from out of state, already a law enforcement officer. So there's a shorter period of time they can go through and just get the vehicle code and the crimes code, and then take a test And they can actually, I believe they can test out, but that's a little more difficult when you've done all your policing out of state. So, but yes, so that would be the shorter stay there. Just it's a mention item. We didn't do it this past time, but we had been relying on the consortium for establishing a list. The consortium we've kind of been shying away from, and it hasn't been as fruitful for us to use. But the one thing that two things it did provide was a written component to our process and also a physical fitness component to our process. So I would like to bring those two components back in-house. Well, I wouldn't do the test myself, hire do that for us, but the physical fitness portion, yes, I could have some admin personnel to go over to the high school on a given afternoon or morning and conduct 3 or 4 fitness assessments and on a pass-fail basis. And then they pass-fail, they pass, they move on, they can do the written, they move on, they can do the interview, rank them off of the test and the interview. So
When was the consortium created, Chief? When was the consortium created?
10 years ago, at least.
It's been around 12 years, and
Yeah.
around since I was here.
Okay, maybe
Yeah.
more than that.
Yeah.
And so we're really, you said essential. Essentially, it's eliminated. So is everyone else?
Doing the same thing we're doing. Yes, while the consortium list is existent,
Mhm,
you wait till September,
mhm.
and when that list becomes available, everybody's at it like sharks, and they go through it, and then there's nothing left. And then and the numerics are down too, from hundreds to
Yeah.
maybe 50 or 40. And then the departments go looking on their own, kind of like we've done. And, we had, I think, 21 or 22 and 19 or 20 show up for interviews. So, and that's for 4 positions.
Yeah.
And you go back to the 90s, you had 200 people for one position.
The reason I'm asking it, we talk about all the time, this board, previous boards, we talk about regionalism and how can we perhaps attain some economies of scale and do things on a more regional basis and collaborate, cooperate. Here we were, neighbor Lancaster Township, considering ways we could do some partnering there. And it makes the paper that obviously they're moving forward and trying to fund a police force. So it's not for lack of will to do things regionally, it's the human resources component, the job market is actually driving us back to our own efforts. We're going to have to hunker down and not just recruit, but test and evaluate and everything.
Yeah, the other thing I'd say is, at least my feeling, I think Steve agrees, we feel better about a process that includes physical fitness, a written test, and an interview. There are municipalities out there that will just call somebody they know, offer them a job, and that's how they fill positions. I don't think that's the right way to go about it. And as a long-term matter, getting the best people we can, having a more thorough process makes more sense to me.
Yeah, our accreditation standards, I would assume, would have some of that language in there on how we select candidates. So my only question would be, is there an opportunity not to, to John's point about regionalization, maybe partner with a Manhunt Township or East Hempfield, like at least one other township to do some of the testing. If we can agree, at first I was thinking like a West Lampeter, but they may not have the need that we have. You probably want to pick a similarly sized department. Now, clearly you might lose candidates to them, but there just might be some economies of scale on smaller regionalization opportunities. So I would just say something you might want to look at. I'm not saying we have to do it. It's just, it takes time to go out there and stopwatch and do all that stuff, so. But it sounds like we have a lot of candidates to have to put through. Yes. To get 11 potentially, we're gonna have to test 100, probably based on past numbers.
Do you think adding the written component? Is it the language arts skills? key. And some people really can fall short in that, just interviewing teachers. I know that. And what you write down as police
I
officers
had it earlier this year.
is pretty critical.
You say you had it earlier in the year?
Yeah, I had to leave somebody go because of that reason.
I wouldn't want to see us lower our standards. I just,
But you're saying because we're moving away from the consortium, we would do that. We'd probably put our own written component in.
Yes,
Yeah.
But we could hire someone that could run those written tests, is that correct?
that's correct.
Yeah, so there's some sort of standard to it and so forth. Yeah.
write Steve an essay on.
The other big component to the police budget is vehicle purchases, and where we normally will ask for 3 or 4 cars a year. I'm asking the board to consider to allow us to purchase 6, and the reason for that is we need 4. But Dodge is discontinuing the Charger at the end of 2024, and when that happens, there won't be whether you call the Charger a full-size car or what you call it, but there won't be anything like that available to us anymore until somebody comes out with something else. Everything that's out there is SUV based. And so my thought is if we can pick up, and they're the cheaper of the 2 vehicles we buy. The Dodge is $11,000 less than the Fords. But if we could get 2 extras and outfit them and allow them to only be driven for court or for training, and then put them into circulation in 2025, instead of having to not have cars to buy that year, then we would have some cars available. Still need some SUVs, but we would have some cars. And under consideration,
Chief, what's the purpose of a police vehicle?
purpose of a police vehicle. It's built in such a way that it would withstand a beating more than its just civilian version. So if you had a civilian Dodge Charger sitting next to a police Dodge Charger, the civilian version will start out with a V6 as a standard power point, and then it'll go up in power to something above what a police car has. But you'll be paying significantly for it. But beefed up suspension, beefed up braking, alternator system, battery, all those kind of things. And the cars run almost around the clock for about 2 years. So
Mileage and the time it's in use. I mean, I would say, based upon your answer, the use is speed to be able to get to or leave from someplace. I mean, it's not like you're hauling a paddy wagon. You've got 10 people. I mean, I've been a dozen countries in Europe, and you never see a muscle car. You never see an SUV. You see a Ford.
Escort.
Escort.
Yeah, but whatever.
I'm being, crass with this, just what is it about American suburban police and law enforcement that drives us to go towards the muscle car? What's the purpose? The purpose is to get someplace as fast as NASCAR can. Kidding you with that. You said it's 11,000.
Cars in Europe are slower.
Say it again. Oh, yeah, it's
They're pulling over cars that are going slower.
once again, just, thinking, are there means for stopping? We take a picture of the license plate and cars, stop chasing the guy, because now we're going to potentially kill him, us, and some pedestrians. Forget it. We just got a picture of your car. We're coming to your house to get you.
and not to put the photographic license plate ticket mechanism into place and
Mhm. Solve a
give
lot
the
of stuff.
respective local municipality their share, which I don't know if they would. Yeah, great.
But the structure of the vehicle is a safe vehicle.
Yes.
If you have to pull over to the side of the road, which would be all kinds of reasons you have to be there, and somebody just plows into you or hits you, I mean, I mean, to me, that's the first thing I think of, the structure of the vehicle. Is safer, and you have to spend so much time, so your chance of having something happen when you're constantly in it. Chief, how many miles a year roughly, would you say?
Somewhere between 40 and 50,000 miles on average on a car. So after 2 years, we're real close to 100.
One thing I know we've talked in the past about this, but depending on where supply chains are at, but there's also like Chevy just came out with a new Blazer EV. But looking at for fleet vehicles and police cars, they now have electric versions, which are, we're not driving 300 miles at once. You're driving it back here, you plug it in. They're stealthy. They
I
have
think
quick
it's-
acceleration, and it might be worth looking at moving in that direction before some of the other folks do, and it might make it easier to get cars.
I think there's a definite place for EVs in law enforcement, at least in this kind of geographic area that we have here. We just need some infrastructure to make that happen. And yeah, I think that could be something that could work pretty well for us. The downside really that I can think of at the moment is if you do a whole fleet, is having a fully charged car available for an incoming shift. Having a fleet for that. As you consider somebody just came off the road after a 12-hour shift, how much charge is left? How long does it take to charge it up? But the next guy's got to be ready to go and doing the numbers on that so that we have enough cars to have charged vehicles. But yeah,
So like Dodge discontinuing their police model is going to end up probably rush next year, and then everyone saying, oh, you mean that Dodge police car isn't available anymore. So my question is this, is 6 enough? What are the numbers run difference between an SUV and a police car? And an officer walking out the door, he or she saying, oh, good, I get to go to the car, or I'm not.
they're assigned and
They're
yeah,
assigned,
they're
so
assigned. And yes, there are officers who absolutely prefer to be in a car over an SUV. My personal opinion is that the car does the job better for us. The advantage of the SUV though is visibility. But just in terms of everyday use, I myself would prefer a car over an SUV. But yeah, that's not really a choice for the officer so much, but the reason why 6, because we typically ask for 3 to 4 cars. So if I thought I could get half of the cars ahead of time, then I wouldn't need them in 2025. I can't get them, because then the only thing around is going to be either a Chevy Tahoe, or the electric Blazer, Ford Explorer, Ford Expedition, a Ford truck, Dodge truck, Chevy truck. Yeah, they're all the Dodge Durango SUV. So it's all SUVs and trucks. The last thing I wanted to put in there was the purchase of new HT and mobile radios. And this is approximately a $200,000 project. We're sitting on better than 3/4 of that, or just around 3/4 of that money in Fund 4, which I think could be a Fund 4 expense. I don't know that we'll get the rest of it in order to do that Fund 4. But we don't buy new radios on an annual basis, so it would be a fitting use of Fund 4 money. My big push for new radios is GPS radios, even though we cannot use them right now with Lancaster County Communications. I believe that's going to happen. That's a radio that they will acknowledge and accept GPS for when it becomes available. So we already have them on our belt, and it's just a matter of turning that feature on and everything working. So that's what I'm looking at.
What is Fund 4?
Fund 4 is asset seizures through the DEA officer that we have.
Mike, we can use those funds for certain things. Can't use them for others.
the county radio system, they have all their challenges worked through.
They do.
And we talked about this for like the last 10 years.
Roger, going back to when you were on the board the first time. I want to-
Yeah. They went to high band radios, but they are looking to replace the whole backbone of their operation up there, which I think is going to take place in the not so distant future. And hopefully that will bring some positive changes to the communication end of things. See,
So it's better than it was.
yes.
Chief, okay, thank you. Thanks for all the.
Yeah, the first one there, we just, trying to do that. Next year, appreciate you guys. Get at least 2 this year, and it helped them. The 4.2,
Coming to that point, you don't see 11 of them.
I don't see 11, but I was looking out there. We got guys in their 50s, and, for everything.
They're young. They're young. They're young. Yeah,
They're young, but they think they're old. They work hard. So, the next one, it said 3 trucks, actually, it should be 4. Keep in mind that some of this will be coming out of liquid fuels. The one, we want to replace the chassis of truck 2, a Freightliner. It's a 2002. But what we're going to do is save the bed and the plow and move that over to the new chassis. Also, one of the trucks, the bed, I don't know if we got a bad batch of steel one time, or we want to replace the bed with stainless steel. Seems to be working out for us. So on all those, it's about $187,000. But like I said, liquid fuels covers a certain percentage of the monies for that equipment. The other one would be in the parks, for small F-550 dump trucks. We've probably dumped close to $6,000-7,000 in the past year or two with issues, and it is 16 years old. So the guys with the maintenance program we got out there is outstanding. So definitely some people are saying, well, we're in 10 years, whatever. We got one that's 2002 and a 16-year-old. The next was the pavilion at Lafayette. We got engineering and stuff that was this year. Right now, we're looking at minus the restroom material. We're getting all the plumbing, electric, and everything to the pavilion. It's looking like about $127,000 minus in the restrooms. Okay. But we're also going to have some money to bed into rainwares and stuff, and do yourself spares. And that's
Where would the pavilion be in Lafayette Park? Is that closer to Lafayette Fire Company? on
Yes,
the-
up where their barricade or the
Yeah.
old sheds are.
Yep.
That's the area we picked, because then you've got baseball teams right there. Our utilities are always.
Yeah, that's right.
through there.
Yeah.
Because there used to be, I guess, an old
Concession.
mobile home up
Oh,
there.
mobile.
There used to be the 2 homes when you turn in.
Mhm.
So there's stuff there. We've been finding it slowly. I mean, there's a sewer lateral out that way extended already, so we gotta find the water service that was. When we put the path in up there years ago,
Mhm.
we extended conduits underneath, so we won't have to tear through all that.
Great.
Question on that one, sort of 2 questions. I don't know if it's maybe worth even looking at what the cost would be to. I know we don't do winter maintenance on the parks. But people use the parks in the winter. So at least even if it's not high priority plowing, but plowing, because I know at least at community park, when you're coming out, if there was snow and ice. If you don't know how to drive it correctly, you just slide into the road. And you have people using it on a daily basis in there, so. It's worth at least plowing the driveways in the winter, and then either.
Move in now, not plowing the parking lots.
Or plow some of the parking lot, or if it's one of, some of it's. They're used heavily, but when it's not plowed and they're used, then it turns to ice. So that's my main concern on those ones. And then what would the cost be to extend the, how long the restrooms are open?
Yeah, I mean,
People are using.
yeah, when I started here, it was, well, let's just wait, and then you get caught, and then your lines are freezing. So that's why we picked Veterans Day, because it's in the middle of November, and then open it up April Fool's Day, April 1st. So we zeroed in on that, because before it was just a shot in the dark. Well, it might be cold next week, but then it's warm the following week, but you drained everything already. So that's the way I've always operated when I.
You've been operating, because it's one of, that's just one of, as a heavy park user with 4 kids. When I had kids that were all boys, it was much easier to find facilities in the parks in the winter. It's a little more difficult.
Yeah.
We can still figure it out. There's some good spots, and I know all the spots in each park, but then the parks are heavily used in the winter, and even if it's a porta potty, what would the cost be to at least keep them partially open or accessible throughout the winter?
And our rental handicap at Lafayette. I think it's about $123 on a week. It's about $4 a month for handicap. So you figure in there.
It gets used. I mean,
You think we'll use more because of sort of a lack of snow and things like that?
well, no, there's no facilities at Lafayette Park. So before we had nothing there, and
You come in.
yeah, the restroom. Yeah, no, I like where Ethan's going, but I also get the idea of, yeah, when you rise it at some point, or you're gonna, I agree with the, plowing. I use Lafayette Park every day, no matter if it's, ice and snow and whatever. And
Walking, you expect, you're walking, we don't need to plow all the trails, but people, I mean, there's a sledding hill in community park.
That's what I asked. You're talking walking trails also?
No, I couldn't.
Just the parking lot, and mainly to get in and out, and it's one of, doesn't have to be. Because the use isn't, people aren't renting pavilions, you don't need to plow every space, but so what I would consider is what's the impact in extra labor, and maybe to put a porta potty in some of the parks. And at least keep the driveways clear.
Yeah, I agree. Just another cost. That's
My sister lives in Albany, New York. Weathers. In her suburban town, Clifton Park, they plow all of the walking trails. They plow all the parking lots, because when we snowshoe, so we're gonna use it, and we're amazed. There's a porta potty. I can, we can use the porta potty. They're very much of a winter oriented type of a community. So, maybe here, weather is getting.
it's getting warmer anyway, right?
Well, it'd be nice to have those facilities available to go in and just use the park and just winter. activity.
This past winter, no snow.
I know.
Say no snow, we got,
So
I get it.
yeah. Okay. Costs, labor and stuff, absolutely. We just received today the construction of the structures, the dump pit we have in the budget this year. Just got a co-stars. Yeah, Federville. So we're looking at a couple things on that may go, but we're getting pricing on the pole barn. So I don't have that in here now. But it looks like possibly that dump pit go this year.
The whole building. Better go for bid.
The
Whole building.
The pole building, if we've got co-stars and good pricing, you don't have to.
Yeah.
What's that figure, 25,000?
What's that?
What's the number? That you go over.
No, it doesn't matter.
They're co-star. Yeah, if you're over 22.9 or something like that, it changes every year, then you've got to go out to bid, advertise everything. But co-stars, if you get 2 co-stars, people that want to bid on it, you can actually have a bidding war. It's not a set price, but we only have 1 co-star. So we're still getting pricing. We got pricing on roof at the mill, leaking. Figure you need to start at the top, start making repairs. The mowers, we trade them in every 5 years. It's done us real good. We're looking at we get our best return for the other numbers because they're in good shape.
So is that no roof, sorry, Roger, is that no roof asphalt shingles? What is it?
We're thinking metal to match the small barn end behind it.
Mine is, and it's been on there for
What about
35 years now.
what about the catwalks up there? Are you gonna take those away, or are you gonna look at those and say, I wish we would have taken them away?
Trying to tell Park Superintendent Troy to make his office up on top of them silos and then he don't like it. But no, we're thinking.
Looks, that looks like a future maintenance.
Yeah, yeah,
We've done that in 2024 or whatever.
yeah. But yeah, we put that pricing. So. it's-
For mowers, same thing with the police cars. Might be worth looking at. It's a fleet conversion, but you can go EV for all those. I've now done it. So I've got zero turn, everything.
Yeah, we just demoed a newer type. It's a little bit bigger cut than what we have now. We're still using our part-time employees. These things actually, the seats level themselves up on the hill. They hold the hills better with tires and different things. So I think we paid a couple years ago, $30,000 for the two that we have now. I think they're 60-inch cuts. These are going to like 64, 65-inch cuts, and they're a larger machine. So, but we're getting like $10,000 or $5,000 a piece for the ones we're trading in. We didn't get that number in stone yet, but trade in, trying to get a bigger model, because we'll have cutting out on the street extension and a greater trail out there. We're gonna have our trails going through Flory Park, so there's gonna be more stuff. I have a potential sweeper down there. I'm still getting measurements on our existing one because our Route 30 projects is getting the pervious pavement put down. I did some research at PA Safety Days over in New York, and they've got these miniature vacuum sweepers. They're like $220,000. But what I'm doing now is trying to find out if one of the local municipalities around us have one. Maybe we rent one. If we use it 4 times a year, is it worth having? You know, so more to come on that one. The HVAC system, looks like our air handlers will be in October. And the plan is to have them installed at that point. The chiller looks like it's going to drag on. Doesn't seem like we're going to get that until like December, which we really don't need the chiller in the winter, but April. So some of that monies that was set aside for replacement of that probably have to carry it.
Okay.
We did pay for half of it already. So my concern was crane in and out, who's paying for the second movement of the crane. Well, actually in their bid price, they put 2 crane operations in. He's hoping not to have a third. Then we're looking at probably about $7,000 to $8,000.
Who's doing that HVAC?
Check. Yep. Willow Road culvert, we were still getting some numbers in on that. I know the board was interested in that culvert repair, high and everything like that. We're starting to get some numbers in. Don't really know where they'll be. We've got some discussion to do. We got some preliminary stuff going on, but I don't have a construction cost yet. Bucket truck purchase, it looks like we're finalizing the bid document on that, the used vehicle. There's a couple around. Due to the price, Starz really doesn't deal with used vehicles, so we're putting the bid packet together, and hopefully within a week we got out to bid. There's a couple people really interested and have a couple. We just want to make sure we do it the proper way. So that make the list for next year. Scanning of documents, we started actually taking some of our land development planning. Get some stuff scanned so we can possibly get rid of the paper copies, which will open up a lot of file cabinets. Same thing, sorry, who's doing this past year. Slid some of my documents in there.
Even it's 5 cubicles where you.
Where I am. They were my major.
That's it. Okay. Thank you, Charlie. Appreciate that. Zoning and planning. Paul?
Not proposing anything with this year. The housing study is currently underway, so as far as the housing station, we'll have to wait and see what that study determines. As far as that's concerned, the comp plan process, we're gonna move forward with some quotes for a full rewrite of our plan. Due to its age, it's gonna be a full rewrite. So.
Just related to the comp plan, you know, the 2 comp plans that we're working under right now are both regional plans. There's in both of those regions have been plans and walking away from the regional plan. So if the board wants us to pursue the idea of a regional plan, we can do that. I think that's going to be difficult.
When you don't have the
Given what's
participation of your neighbors.
Right. So at this point, what we've been talking about is basically doing our own comp plan.
So
So
the Central Lancaster Regional.
Yep.
Anybody pulling away from that?
everybody, yeah, West Lampeter, East Hempfield, Manheim Township, City.
What's the rationale? What's everyone citing?
I'm not sure I've heard a rationale other than they just want to do their own. They didn't feel attached to the regional plan that.
And some left the LIMC for a short period of time, did their own plan, came back to the LIMC, and now have that plan in place but are still participating on a regional level, just not in necessarily the comprehensive plan.
Right. So I would assume when we would do our comprehensive plan, we would look at the surrounding plans and,
We absolutely have.
we have to, right, we know we have to comment on them, et cetera, but yeah, and use it as guidance, but still, yeah, it just seems like municipalities are just getting more and more complex. We're a growing area of the country, counties growing overall. Just, I can see other municipalities saying they don't feel a connection to it because it's, let's say it's vague, but it's just too big, right? It's too many different areas that they have to talk about in the plan. So I would say, I think we definitely should go forward with our own, but if we could use any other option, frankly.
I think going forward on our own, it would be to try to take into account the neighbors as much as, even though we're not doing a regional, but to try to use common language, common definitions as much as possible. Ideally, we have a simplified zoning ordinance that crosses boundaries, but it's Pennsylvania. We're not going to get there from here.
Yeah,
But if we can at least intentionally look at our neighbors and try to make it match as much as possible, that'd be good.
I'd say, but yeah, I'd like to see us continue to send the message that we're developing our comprehensive growth plan. We're looking at our official map. We're looking at our zoning, all in relation to the municipalities that surround us. East Lampeter isn't walking away from any planning concepts or intentions or visions that are regional in nature. We have neighbors that have decided that perhaps maybe the focus of their efforts is on their own comp plan, but we want to continue to send the message to them as well that, hey, let us see yours. Let's all ensure that we're doing this. I suspect we're going to be here in 10 years and there's going to be a regional comprehensive plan move and come back. I mean, it's cyclical. Let's leave the LIMC because someone looked at me different. Okay, let's leave the LMC, we pack up, we go take our toys and we go join with some other group called the not LIMC. So we create a comprehensive growth plan, and we get everybody involved, and then 10 years from now, we're gonna create the new LIMC with a different I mean, this is what happens, and it's just a waste of everybody's resources.
It's almost gonna be fun.
Consultants do fine, they can, I don't have any, honestly, I don't have any concern if I'm no longer on this board that this group's ever gonna walk away from that concept. I mean, Ethan himself is the epitome of regionalism, like, it's just what he speaks about, which is a great thing. I appreciate that. But my gosh, we spent the 90s, beating this message throughout this community, and now people are saying, well, I'm not quite sure we want to do that anymore.
I just wanted to.
Yeah, that's
Throw that
helpful.
out there.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Another out.
Go ahead, Colin.
Okay, number 4, the board, considers a hotel inspection program. We would most likely contract with a third-party agency, much like we do already with, property maintenance and also for, building code plan review. And also possibly someone here at the township as part of staff moves to administer that program. Number 5, as Charlie mentioned, we're going to continue getting the documents. We just completed all of the subdivision and development documents, and we're going to be moving on to property files.
You want more cubicles? Do.
On that inspection company, is that rudimentary, maybe investigation of that, or other hotels in and around the area using something like that, municipalities using for those hotels?
Yeah, that's something that I'm currently doing. I'm asking around, getting some preliminary prices to see what that looks like.
Mike, there aren't any other municipalities inspecting hotels that I'm aware of.
In Lancaster or at all?
Lancaster, I know.
You have Apple, so we'd be the first one to.
We will lead and become the regional hotel inspector, okay? And then now she can start their own, and these can start their own. Well, our own individual.
The main one on there is going to be the third party folks. Do they have the capacity, if we were to start at least regular inspections, even if it was just for hotels that do a nuisance list? Ideally, it'd be fee based and it would pay for itself.
Does EBI have that in their purview?
So we did ask ABI a number of years ago when we talked about this type of program, and the numbers they came back with at that time when the company was run by Randy Mauer were excessive. Based on the number of hotel rooms we have and the time it would take to go through those initial inspections, I don't doubt that they have the staff available. I don't doubt that code administrators doesn't have the staff available as well. I think that any one of them that we currently have on our list that we would inquire with staffing as well as cost would shock us with cost, especially with initial review of each hotel. Going in cold to a hotel with 100 rooms takes a little while. There's a certain checklist you go through, but still takes some time.
Just on the conversations we've been having too, the word is inspection. Like, what does that mean? Because if we have an ordinance that's going to be a nuisance hotel, what we really want is collaboration. We want them to be able to talk to chief, come up with creative ideas. Right? Creative ideas, to solve some of these problems that we see, and so as we talked about the other night, the ordinance, if they call, it's not counted against them. So that's like a mandatory collaboration and help them if that's the case. But building inspection is one thing, but some of these other things are another. That's where I was interested in what kind of pricing is going to go into that.
This would be solely building inspection.
IPMC.
Yeah.
They have the IPMC as their guide. But back to your point, the initial ramp up to get the baseline,
Right.
here's 3,300 units you need to inspect. So establish a baseline. Lafayette.
Vehicle accident, entrapment, Route 30 and on ramp. Lincoln Highway.
Okay, Colin?
Okay, moving on to stormwater management, again, no new codes. We reached out to a consultant, to give us a cost benefit analysis for the dam removal, along Mill Creek. We'll see what that comes back as. And hopefully we get some credit for that. So,
Right, so that would be the 4 dams that we're aware of between Mill Mill and Flory Park. And it's either removal, breaching something, and then removal of the legacy sediment that's behind those dams. So that's a cost benefit analysis that is needed in order to move forward with discussions with DEP.
The stormwater pipe inspections, they're going well from what I hear and seen. So we're gonna continue that, $100,000 per year, and it's a 4-year project. Number 4, payment of the revolving water fund, $746,000, either at the end of this year or beginning of next. And then our PRP, is being reviewed by DEP right now. We're not sure which projects gonna make it, likely in the range of $400,000, $500,000, $600,000.
You do expect that at some point the pipe inspection process is going to reveal pipes that need to be replaced, repaired. Work needs to be done to them, so.
We did find one already, I guess UGI did a cross bore through the top of one of the storm sewer pipes. They have an emergency card, the company that's working for us filled it out and sent it right to UGI. So we haven't heard anything on the repair, but
Do we know how long ago that occurred?
where was it? Out in Greenfield.
Huh?
It's on their report where they were. But they take pictures, they document everything, the stationing, the area that they're in, and by an address. Then it all gets taken to the UGI, and that's already been submitted to
Oh,
them.
could have been that way for years.
You just don't.
You would know.
Yeah, it looks like plastic pipes, so I don't think it's real old stuff. I mean, the metal pipe is basically the reason for doing this inspection. But, yeah, they're finding stuff,
So when you say pipe, that's
stormwater pipes.
stormwater, sewage, or?
No, so it's just, yeah.
Done?
Okay.
As a reminder, the stormwater fund is actually a sewer authority fund. So, but because it's our permit to meet the MS4 requirements, we want to share that information with you guys, and so you know what's going on.
Is the water fund, the revolving fund, that's conservation, isn't it? Does that go to
To
conservation?
capital. To capital. They did a presentation to the board and the sewer authority on projects. They basically did projects or are doing projects on farms and getting credits, and then we purchase the credits from them.
It's part of our revised PRP, which we're waiting for DEP to approve. So we can't extend the funds until we have the approval from DEP.
Mike, does that help you? Okay. Okay, IT.
So pretty much a maintenance year this year in IT. The biggest new addition would be the printers in the PD. And that's 2 printers for a total of 12,000. There's consideration for a screen in this front meeting room to act as another meeting facility for online meetings. And then a kiosk in the lobby on a stand so that individuals, resident landowners can make payments or achieve permits directly on a device. And then I think we've put this out there a number of times, but if the board is interested in considering tablets, 3 out of 5 of you bring your laptops. So, if that's shouldn't be on there, let us know.
Would those have cameras? Like, what would be the purpose of the, because I know at some point we talked about like using that as the microphone, sound, so no. Yeah, got it. Yeah. So it's purely for access to the information. I don't need it. I already have enough devices.
Seems like a waste of time to me, anyone.
Yeah, I question the key. I mean, I ran projects for kiosks in healthcare and they never got used, you know, because it's just too complex and
When it needs to come in, use a kiosk and can't do it online, can't use a kiosk. Yeah, we've looked at kiosks too, it's just.
Have you talked to other municipalities who have them, there's ROI?
We have not talked with municipalities that have.
I mean, the kiosk companies are great at selling kiosks, you know, so I don't know. I'm a big into technology, big into self-service. I enjoy checking myself out at the supermarket, but I see the people, I look at the people who are in front of me and I pick the line based on who's in front of me, if you know what I mean? And if it's someone who's gonna struggle, I will go to any, I'll leave. the store.
Too much technology sometimes, it's too much technology.
Yes.
I just,
Well, it would be, what are you addressing, you know?
Yeah,
What they're
exactly.
in off hours, they need something. Does that help? But it's hard to believe you can't do something like that online. You know, I just don't know what you get out of that. It's not, but I just don't know.
I'd rather have more functionality online to that point, you know, but yeah.
You're getting a certain volume into the lobby.
We are getting a certain volume coming into the lobby that are looking to pay with credit card, which we don't take at the counter.
Oh, I would start doing that. PCI fine.
Open up the website and do what the person would do online.
Basically what will be on the kiosk.
yeah, I have iPads at all three of my showrooms and a consumer can come in and apply for all their financing and things, just my website on an iPad. They just apply for all the, so I can see that you could have an iPad with a swiper or a presenter or something, and you have those.
I wouldn't swipe anything at this point, but just the better one would be improve the ability to take credit cards on our website.
Well, we know
Stop
you
charging
can,
a fee.
we know you can book a hotel and pay for it and go right to the hotel and open it up with your phone.
Your app. Done it plenty of times. It's
Makes sense, Tara, kind of where we're going with it. I think we're here to the board. It's, you know,
Just
probably.
a point of reference for the folks who looked at the cost of transacting business with check and cash. It's way more expensive than to pay a credit card fee. So checks and cash cost way more than 3% to process. It's anywhere from 5 to 15%. So
How would that impact your world?
we can eliminate our fee on our website. We probably get more people doing it there.
How would that impact your world back there?
They'll have, at least in our township, a fair number of people that they want to pay with a
Yep.
check or cash.
There's financial incentive to do so. It costs.
No, people just do. It's just, people aren't resisting. They just do. People just do stuff like that.
It's also cheaper.
You gotta make it available for people. You know. Okay,
So recreation, we are hopeful to have a recreation director on staff before the end of 2023, which would then lead to that person needing summer recreation staff next year and the programming, supplies, things that are all needed for such programs. So quite honestly, I pulled a number out of a hat here because I have no idea what this person coming in will come up with as potential programming or needs of staff. So if you feel those numbers are out of alignment, and we need to hear that.
Hopefully, we can get somebody on board fairly quickly. They can help us develop what these costs are before a budget needs to be adopted. But
So seasonal, one thing I would think of is seasonal. How much per season, some seasons, summer, spring. I think a couple thousand each.
Along with that, I know this would happen, just to underscore it, that make sure that's well presented on the website. I just had an instance, like, where do you go for some of this? So I think some of those questions will come directly to our website. So we can get a lot of those questions answered right on the website about recreation, adult services and things like that. I think we'll be on the cutting edge of recreation opportunities in East San Pedro Township. I think it's a very good move.
Yeah, I'm all for recreation. I was on the committee regarding recreation. However, the negative number for 2026 is on my shoulders right now, right on my head. So I think we as a board have to, you know, as each of the leaders were discussing their, we're not even done, right? Each of the leaders have been discussing the things. I've been like, yeah, makes sense, makes sense, makes sense, makes sense. And then we got to recreation. And unfortunately, you know, I'm saying in the back of my mind, do we have the appetite for that at this point, right? Do we have the money to do it? We have, like I said, we haven't even gotten to, you know, some of the emergency services stuff and just some of the other critical stuff that we have to provide as a township. I mean, we did talk about police department, but just so many other things. So I just not saying against it at this point. I'm just saying I'm feeling the pressure of the number that Kevin showed us at the beginning of the meeting. Anyone else having similar thoughts?
Yes, as far as we starting with, we have the recreation director. At the very least, let's come up with a year to come up with a plan. I wouldn't budget necessarily any additional staffing for 24 beyond what we already have planning to hire.
What's our salary and how that's split?
That salary is solely ours at this.
Solely ours, no school district help fund.
We are in partnership with the school district for the facility usage, but not for funding.
What's the salary?
It was put at 55 to 65,000.
See 2 resumes. The deadline was this past Friday.
Starting with one
Yeah.
person that's a good place to start.
Moving on, emergency alert software is coming in at $10,000 for next year. And as I talked about, Lillian did a number of interviews with individuals for the software, and those ranges were significant, anywhere from $5,000 to $40,000. The codification process, we're working through with the consultant, the final document, and that's an ongoing cost to the township now, you know, to keep up with resolutions and the ordinances that are adopted. We have greater personnel, so we are running out of parking spaces in the rear of the building where staff typically park. We have been having some staff park in the front of the building. And so that's been a savings at this point. We had on the site plan for the township an additional parking area next to the emergency generator in the rear of the building here. So we have an estimate of 75,000 to move forward with that. Libraries and funding of libraries. Same calculations moving forward. This has been a discussion that the board has had yearly.
Langston Libraries asked to come before you again, expecting that to happen your first meeting in October. So.
Roger, Mike, do you guys have speaking to this?
Well, I'm hearing the operating budget might be a little bit stressed because of the downtown library and, you know, a lot of gifting and fundraising for that. I don't know. I think I need to see a bigger picture. You certainly want a vibrant community that has that, but information availability now is different. You know, I know they're doing some very special things there.
I think the main issue is we currently split that. We fund pretty high, but we split it based off of the previous year's circulation usage base. So in other words, if a third of the people go to Strasburg High, so we're writing a check to Strasburg, same with Manheim Township. The city wants all the funds to go to the city library.
I like the way we've done it for years where you're dividing it up based upon our citizens' usage at the various locations. I think that's fair.
That was a larger increase last year. So, board expects that to stay at that level.
Bob May will be in front of you again, as he normally is. I think that's the September meeting, when he's coming.
Quick going back, what's the current amount we had like in the 22 budget or 23 budget for libraries? 38, 36. Initial goal, we sort of started moving the funding up about 10 years ago, was the number that the library used to use for us was $5 per head. I've always sort of used half of that as my target.
Library in 2022 was budgeted 40,000. 2023 budgeted 42,000.
But those are correct numbers.
Look at the difference.
So I think what I said last time too was I think we've hit, so my target was as the township willing to put up half of the $5 per head and then really encourage our donation from members of the township to cover the remainder. So I think my mind sort of 250 per capita was the target I've always been shooting to get to, which is, I think we're there, depending on where the census, and which census data would go off of.
Yeah, I mean, the official 2020 is the 17,776, so 2.5, it's, between 44 and 45,000 at that rate.
Closing in on it. So in other words, I think we're in the ballpark on library funding. There or increase it a little bit. Good way.
Mike, Corey.
I would hold. I mean, we don't have a location in our township, right? I mean, I like where Ethan's going, but I would hold.
We're good there. The other question go back was, if we've got parking out front, can we just?
Yeah, I was gonna go back there too. Yeah, is there any reason why, so I've seen the parking lot full when there's a baseball, Little League baseball game, but it's Friday night, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, no one's really here. When do we see that lot full during the day at any time?
Probably when we have trainings here. But the zoning and building code official trainings are held here in our building quarterly.
35, 40 people?
Or 50 to 60.
Wow. And so basically we run out of spots at that point?
We definitely filled that parking lot.
Okay.
I would be with you guys on that one. I think 75 could hold. I look at that.
Yeah, I would say,
Out there, I think that asphalt
yeah.
is wide open most of the time.
I mean, can Colin work from home on those days? He's not in the training. I picked on you, Colin. I have no idea why. Kevin, Chief Zerby.
Trying to clear the parking.
Sure.
We've got employees trying to get in there. Get back here.
Yeah.
So everybody can park. And then.
I can't see us pushing for more parking in the back.
You don't run a 2-hour delay.
No, we try to keep the schools from having a 2-hour delay.
Well, when there's a popular basketball game or something, they park in the drive. Couple times a year at the school.
We answer your questions on school board stuff. I'm so. Okay, 56 for 2 years in a row. Third year will be 56.
So moving forward, outreach for homelessness, panhandling as a potential regional effort. Again, a number coming out there to start the conversation. So listening for feedback.
At least that, I think it might be worth looking at I think the best use might be a grant that a local nonprofit could apply for. Sort of maybe a matching grant if someone wanted to hire an outreach coordinator.
I'd like to see just the local churches just do it themselves and save us all money.
They're trying, they just can't put any units up anywhere.
Capital Reserve.
Oh, no.
Yeah, capital. Project is now moving into the phase 3 project along Lincoln Highway. Green Light Go along Old Philadelphia Pike. We need to put up 55,000. That grant was 217,500. The Smart Growth Transportation Project, which is our trail to Oakview, that was awarded to the township at 1 million and change. That's a $2 million project. Lancaster Heritage Pathway Studies, we have 2 grants for that, one through the CSA and one through Connects 2040, which we just got 11 consultant statements of interest. The Bridgeport Route 462 engineering, that will move forward. It's about $600,000, but that's going to be based on the timing that is implemented on the tip. So we need to work with the county.
Great.
Gibbons Park at Knoll Mill. So we did apply for funding through the Fish and Wildlife. Yes. And Fish and Boat Commission, thank you. And we were denied that funding. So that's a $600,000 project to both sides of the park there. And is that something the board sees using the Parkland Capital Reserve?
How much money do we have in Parkland Cap Reserve? Kevin's working with Mark.
Is that because we're still figuring out what we want to do?
Ask the question again, Mike, sorry.
I was wondering why Gibbons Park wasn't on a recreational category. Is it because we're still in the planning phase, or the park
We
people?
have a design for the park to be built as a passive recreation park. The bridge over the Mill Creek there, parking area for about 30 parking spaces, and a trail system, both on the east and west side of the creek there.
These are capital expenses compared to the operating expenses that you mentioned in the fund. That's no problem.
So we're committed. We have a design. We're still working on the funding.
Yes.
Yeah, right. It should be our fourth.
Right. Gibbons is our 4th.
I just want to make sure I understand Mike's question. When you say we're committed, a plan was created, but now the rubber hits the road. If
For a grant.
we applied for a grant, we got denied. Now the rubber hits the road. If we want to use 100% of our money, now it's coming from a different account than the normal capital. It's coming from the Parkland Cap Reserve account. So it's good use of
And
that.
that account is for Parkland.
Do reduce that.
Yeah.
So when we have a discussion with an applicant that comes towards this, you owe us towards parks and open space.
Yeah, but my question is, how much actually is in there? Like, is this using 75% of the reserve, or is it
We
using?
have 600,000 in the.
No. Okay.
And what else is it used for?
We used some of it to buy playground.
Playground.
But it all has to be capital park.
Right.
type expenses.
We will have some funds coming into there with Greenfield.
I was gonna say, large, nice amount.
And then. with-
Eventually, well,
Yeah, so John, I think the question is, again, do we put time, effort, and funds toward this project, or do we tap the brakes again on it?
I think this board or future boards, which is what had Kevin put together that 5-year,
Yeah.
2 years ago. You know, I got back of the envelope at my house where I've been working through this. Now, I've been working through the previous numbers.
Yeah.
I'm sure Ethan's got at least 6 spreadsheets overlap with this and we show all kinds of stuff. He's working on the same numbers that we were, so somebody between 2024 and 2026 is going to have to start to come up with some revenue enhancements to be able to make up for some of this and or some expenditure reductions.
Right.
Considering that we've been very conservative for many, many years with our revenue enhancements. And there are some things there that the community has spoken into over the past 10 years. I think we're gonna have to balance that.
Yes.
I'm not gonna be on this board, so,
Yeah.
some board's gonna have to answer that question.
Kevin, how much of the budget can we actually impact?
So are you,
Let's not, I get it out. You can all sit here and give out some.
Pull things out. So, I mean, what is that number? I mean, I know what it was because I asked the same question 15 years ago. I just want to know if it changed or not. Percentage that this board can say, spend this, don't spend this and all that.
so employees, wage benefits, utilities that are fixed costs, debt service, which is fixed costs. We're probably 75% of the budget. Roughly. We can get you a better number
No,
than my
it's
rough.
Because it was 70 the last time I asked that question.
Well,
So you're,
that's-
so, that didn't change that much.
No,
So it's either delay spending, increase taxes, stuff like that, because some of these are dragging through and there's 3% increases, 4% increases and all that, which really we have no control over that. We want a good solid police department that's going to cost X and we know what it's going to cost 2 years from now.
Right.
Is the reserve percentage key to our credit rating? Kevin?
I don't believe so, but
Sure, related.
it's definitely related.
Recommendations of things to do to improve your credit rating.
Sure.
It's not the thing, but
It's back to his point.
Next, having a multi-year capital plan is the next thing that most people would recommend you do, like the county just did. On this one, and so there's two issues that in my time on the board have been sort of consistent issues, and it's, do we spend the money? Do we try to get more grants? Or do we not spend the money? And they've been pedestrian access and parks and recreation. And we consistently try for grants and spend, unless it's a small piece. So my recommendation would be similar to what we do with fire apparatus fund. I use that as an example. Is there are larger big ticket items that happen once every 5 years maybe, and then there's smaller sort of purchases like playground equipment. We're making a commitment with having a program director. We want to increase the utilization of those parks. We want to better utilize those fees coming from developments. I'd advocate putting a target amount per capita into the parks fund every year as part of our regular budget. And then when that number builds up, we can use it towards matching a grant or actually purchasing something, as opposed to a hypothetical, where we're going to come up with 600 grand this year. It's, well, the fund in 3 years will have, $1 million in it. And then we have a capital plan for all of our parks of, all right, here's where the park is now, here's where we'd like it to go. Let's match those up. And we have a program director and we're looking at usage. Similarly with those pedestrian access points, those gaps in our sidewalks would be another fund that I would say, what's a regular amount we can invest so that, and then when we have the money, we spend the money, as opposed to trying to come up with the money 5 years from now. But, a dollar head into the fund every year, in addition to all the fees coming in and the grants.
That's a way to do it. The other way to do that is do borrowing and, higher interest rate environment. So, that is one way to do it.
Thoughts, Mike?
Things to think about.
Some things I think you ought to be giving some consideration to, because back to Ethan's point, for, well, the late nineties, Walmart opened up and we started to develop Flory Park, but we only got it about 40% of the way. And we've continued to make investments and did so just recently to the east side. The west side has seen really next to no investments beyond the parking lot and I guess the bike trail, the trail that goes off over towards the east side. But Gibbons Park is coming on and that's, obviously, staff is looking for some guidance and direction. What do we do with some of this, park space we have over here, this wonderful asset? Are we investing in it? Are we not? And I would agree with what Ethan's saying. I'd rather see us, I would like to have seen a $5 million bond at some point to do parks and open space. Would love that. But I think considering where rates are now, I think that's probably 3 to 5 years out where rates are going to be back to where it's favorable. So why not look at doing some sort of revenue enhancements slightly in 24, slightly in 25, slightly in 26, and then look to begin to set up, a parks cap fund that you can, per capita basis, you start to fund that, but you've got that over the next 3 to 5 years, and the community can begin to see, late 2020s, wow, really taking Gibbons Park and Flory Park and perhaps the Greater Lancaster Heritage Pathway, and suddenly we've got some real eye-catching, attractive, alternative recreational outlets that weren't here in 2020.
When do funds go to the park and cap reserve as developments materialize?
Typically, when they record the plan, or sometimes it's an arrangement where as they get building permits, they're putting portions in. So
So
as they're developing.
1,100 new apartments coming in the next 3 years, roughly.
Right. The amount for Greenfield North has already been fixed.
Yeah.
You know that. And then, as other developments happen, those amounts are fixed at that point in time.
What did we end at the number for Greenfield North?
150,000.
Okay, so you're gonna have 150. So that's a one-time, Mike. It's not over 3 years, okay? But, sorry, Greater Lancashire Heritage Pathway, Flory Park, Gibbons Park, hopefully some great trails, connecting all. So I do think that there's value in going back to the community and saying, on a per capita basis, here's how much we're going to put in over the next 3 to 5 years, 5 to 10 years, whatever. At some point in the future, there could be 5 years from now, it could be a favorable interest rate environment. And then you say, wow, let's go out and do a $5 million bond for taking the Greater Lancaster Heritage Pathway to wherever, and keep doing some of those things. But I think Ethan's point is well taken. We may be at the point where trying to do it through state grants and try to make it work that way begins to exhaust the efforts. And suddenly you've got a parks and rec person who's going, guys, I got a real vision here for the community and I can't really get this going.
Or because you also have your ongoing investment, you have other areas where they form a foundation and the foundation goes out and Toyota put in the pavilion in East Petersburg. It's a ginormous pavilion and the dealership down the street put it in. So there's pieces there, but you do need that ongoing maintenance piece, so we should be investing for some capital, but also those ongoing maintenance on Gibbons Park. I think there's an opportunity to scale it back to a conservancy land level of access. Which is, I've hiked a lot of conservancy land. They clearly didn't spend $600,000 to put in the parking lot and the path trail system.
Yeah, the bulk of that is a bridge over the creek.
Yeah. But if it was, hey, here's a parking lot, go fish and put in a canoe wherever you feel like it. which I can do at multiple conservancy lands.
The other projects I just wanted to mention quickly that aren't listed there per se, is, you know, the board has been granted funds for 462 improvement, first phase in Bridgeport. We're obligated to fund the pre-construction cost of that. So in the next couple of years, there's pre-construction obligation that we've got. And then we've applied for 2 construction grants for the Heritage Pathway, one through DCNR, one through CFA. And so if either of those come through, or both of them, there's going to be township obligation there to fund a portion to get it from where it's ending now to Geist Road. So those are out there.
Can any of those, can those 462, $30 on RBF, can we use highway aid funds for them?
For the design work,
Yeah. Is that possible to take those dollars that are coming in and turn them back into that? I was gonna write that one down, but check that out.
we can check. I would be concerned about moving too many liquid fuels dollars in that direction. We need those dollars for ongoing payments.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, that's one question. Usually, I usually tell that in February which projects you're gonna do for which roads.
Yeah,
That's fine.
yeah, I can have that information, I guess, in our workshop in October.
Yeah.
I see, sorry, no, go ahead.
No, I think I had, that was fine.
Anything else on the, I forget where we were. Anyway, it's ICDA's and I'm,
Under the ICDA, the bid will hopefully move forward this year, so that for next year, we still have the gateway signage on both ends to move forward, the wayfinding signage, and then brand implementation.
I did have 2 questions. Not really, I remember now. ARPA funds and opioid settlement. Any revenue opportunities or I guess any updates on either of their 2 topics?
Of the ARPA funds that we got directly, we've got maybe 300,000 that we have obligated somewhere. More than that. So that's what's out there. We've got to spend those by the end of 24. So yeah, they've got to be obligated somewhere in this budget.
Yeah.
As Charlie mentioned, we paid for half of the HVAC system,
Yeah.
and we did make the deposit into the fire.
Yeah, the opioid settlement stuff, we don't see a dime of that.
So nothing comes from us back from the county or anything. It's just essentially.
It's all programs, yeah, they come in to get an allocation.
Okay.
Funding their programs through
I'm
that.
just wondering, like the homeless stuff, like, I don't know if there's just any way, will they be giving grants out of any sort?
Not that I've heard.
Okay.
There are some municipalities who go after their own grants for those, directly with HUD or the state, rather than most counties are the ones that handle that, but there's plenty of cities that do it directly and also some municipalities.
So what did we miss?
When we do come back in October in the workshop, I'm gonna have some real hard numbers for those trucks, because you know as well as once out, they said the earlier you can get your bid in or your order in.
because you do now.
So I'll have some real hard numbers at the October.
Yeah, and the other thing, Charlie, is just, are there any opportunities to save money by, paying up front? The fire truck, we heard potential discounts if you pay now versus pay later. So any opportunities there? Sorry, did I interrupt someone?
The only other ones were on the emergency response side, firefighters. One would be for police as well as fire, but increasing our false alarm fees, putting more teeth into the permit for an alarm, or even having a permit for an alarm, and then revoking if we get a few false alarms. Mannock Township has the most teeth to theirs. Then we'll be looking at a tax rebate for volunteer firefighters and EMS. I know East Hempfield has theirs. I don't know how much it's cost each year, but they've had it for 5 years. Lancaster Township has one. I'd like to at least see what the cost would be to do that.
I would expect that'll be discussed through the PSC committee setting up. They talked about it a number of years ago and ultimately decided that fire companies didn't like the idea, so it was.
We also have EMS as well. So I don't know if they're part of that discussion. And that's for those who don't know, it's a property tax rebate and an earned income tax rebate. That was recently amended to allow you to go up to 100%.
So if I'm a volunteer firefighter, I could understand it, but if I get paid to do my job and I get a tax rebate, I don't know if I like that. I don't get a tax rebate for doing my job.
$15 an hour to drive it.
I have a lot of employees that make $15 an hour. They don't get a tax rebate. I don't know. I would have.
We can incentivize some of them to drive an ambulance.
I don't want them to. It's not volunteer. They're being paid. I want to work for me. Mike. Okay, nothing else, Corey?
I do. Just want to bring it up at this meeting, not for a decision, but would love to get the time of meetings for next year to start at 7 p.m. So I thought I would ask our fellow board members that will still be here next year if they have any thoughts on that.
Thoughts?
I like 5 p.m.
I would love it.
Might be not roll with it, whatever we need.
7 p.m. Whatever for your work for your schedule, Ethan.
Yeah, I mean, I can do 7. It's just then when we start those other early meetings, now it starts to push
Push
down.
into work day.
Sure.
I'm definitely open to morning meetings. Early, like 5, 6,
Yeah.
7. Before 7. Work sessions.
You can't do public meetings before.
Again.
You can do public meetings anytime.
Hold on, I know, I have agendas and no one comes to them. Public doesn't participate. And it's tough for those of us who work and volunteer, it's tough. I prefer evening meetings. I try to get evening meetings in because I have a life and I have to work and I can't get away for day meetings, so.
I'm just asking for a half hour, 7 p.m. start for the board of supervisors. And I understand Ethan's point about conditional use hearings and liquor license transfers and so forth. But, you know, in the last year, we maybe had,
This board's, we've been open to
Board
those kind of things.
So we're filling up September 18th. So.
Would staff have an issue if the board decided to move their public meetings from 7:30 till 7 p.m.? You have any problem?
Decide when you want to have them, we will be here.
Potential conflicts with, I know we've had some at different times with other public meetings that happen on that same night for
Now, we typically
third party folks.
keep those meetings dedicated to the board meetings. We know when parks and zoning and sewer authority and planning commission are, so we just avoid those same evenings.
We just need to move the ICDA to 6:30 instead of 7.
And that was Ethan's concern, is that all those that preceded then suddenly push into. So, but up to you guys.
Yeah.
You'll have to decide. I think, don't they have to decide that before?
well, we have to.
We advertise in December.
Yeah, so I had talked to Hutch about it and, you know, I just wanted to get it out there. Just clearly, we have to make that decision sometime for December.
Well, I'm hearing the board say they're open till 7. They're open to 7. I hear stats say open to 7. So all those in favor of moving the board meetings from 7:30 p.m. till 7 p.m.?
Aye.
You make a motion. Oh, did you make?
I'll make.
Yeah.
Okay, those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Okay, motion carries.
First time a chair has made a motion in one of our meetings. I'm proud of you.
Easy,
Oh, you did.
easy peasy.
Okay.
The only other one is, do we have a timeline on the Pearson's, you know, the finance
Recommendation.
Committee, I know it's finalizing names. I'd have to look at my last email.
We don't have to go to former committee yet.
I don't know if he has a committee for completed for finance and the other. The other committee,
Human resources.
human resources. Yeah.
Yeah, I would guess we're a year away from recommendations.
It'd be worth for that committee as well, but what would increasing our apparatus match look like?
Yep, that'll be part of those discussions without a doubt.
Because I have concern looking at the individual fire companies' budgets and the current apparatus plan that they're gonna be able to buy the stuff that they want.
And Mike, your two committees, Mike, are looking at both the personnel recruiting, personnel retention, and also the financial implications of staying with the existing plans or changing those plans, types of apparatus, size of apparatus. And so forth.
Well, I think they're going to be talking about all issues concerning finance, not just the apparatus.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate that. Key is keep them all involved and keep their voices at the table. Right. Anything else, staff? Anything else? Thanks.
Thank you.
No one on public, no one showed up, no one out there. Okay.
To adjourn.
Second. Motion by Corey, second by Mike.